Okay.
Slippery snake.
Slippery snake.
Slippery snake.
Can you go? Now say slippery snake. By yourself.
Slippery snake.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the ranch. Happy Friday to you. More importantly, Merry Christmas Eve to you. Hope you guys are all doing well, getting ready for Christmas. We are looking forward to Christmas with the kids. We're all getting together on Christmas Eve, so we're really looking forward to that. And once again, I hope you guys get to spend some good time with your family and friends, and just hope you have a wonderful Christmas. But anyway, like I said, happy Friday to you. This is actually Thursday for me. This video will launch on Friday morning, but the reason I'm doing it today is because the weather's supposed to get really brutal tonight and turn bad for several days. So old Luther and I are out here on the ranch just checking everything, making sure that everything can tolerate temperatures that low tonight, because it's going to be pretty rugged out here on the ranch. But I was just thinking as I was driving around, I needed to get on YouTube and at least make a little video to tell all you guys I love you and tell you Merry Christmas. And I got to thinking, and I thought, well, I usually bring you guys 3 presents, you know, kind of in honor of the 3 wise men, though my 3 presents are usually pretty dang goofy. As I was driving around, I just started thinking of some stories, some story time with Dr. Lee kind of stories that I could bring that were all associated with Christmas. Interestingly enough, they're all associated with Friday, and so that will be my gift to you today. So with no further ado, we will dive right in. Yep, 3 gifts just for you. The first one of which is a story where a righteous man was completely misjudged by most of the entire world. The second story is a situation where I was misjudged by people in power and almost completely destroyed. The third gift has to do with a young lady that I completely misjudged and almost destroyed her life. The first of these 3 stories I remember very well. It was a cold day in December in College Station, Texas, about 2 weeks from Christmas, and I was a vet student. I was in my 3rd year, and which means I'd been in school for almost 7 years at this point in time, and our budget was pretty stressed by now. Plus, we had a brand new baby, you guys all know as Matt Carriker, and so we had a lot of expenses from that too. But went out to the mailbox on this cold Friday morning, and brought the mail back in and opened it all up, and lo and behold, one of the letters was a scholarship that I had received, and it was for $1,000. And we had just been sitting there talking about how we were going to have to pay tuition and book fees and all that kind of stuff in the next month, and wondering where the money was going to come from. And here, this just fell out of the sky, and I told my wife, I said, you know, I'm really excited about it. I said, but I just started thinking, and I have a feeling this is a mistake. And she said, why do you think it's a mistake? And I said, because these are meant for 4.0 straight A students. And I said, I was a straight A student for 6 years, but I haven't been a straight A student this past year. With everything that's been going on, I haven't had that much time to study, and my grades have gone down. I said, I made all A's and B's, and I said, I have a feeling this is going to get retracted. So got pretty depressed thinking about that over the weekend. Monday morning, I went into the dean's office and had a good friend that worked there. She was an older lady that I really liked, and I think she kind of liked me. I'd always stop by and tell her hair looked nice, or that was a pretty dress she had. I'd poke my head in while I was walking by the dean's office just to mess with her a little bit. But anyway, she and I were good friends, and I told her, I said, and we will call her Margie, just to protect the guilty and the innocent. I stopped by the office, and went in there and I said, Margie, I said, I got this check in the mail and I'm pretty sure it's not for me. I said, we've been so busy, I haven't been able to study that much and had to work a lot. And I said, I don't even have a 4.0 grade point average anymore. I said, I've got all A's and B's. And she said, well, I kind of have to disagree with you on that. And I said, what do you mean by that? And she said, that's your money. And I said, well, I don't understand. And she said, well, let me show you something. And she took a folder out of her desk and she opened it up and she said, I'm not telling you to look at this, but I've got to go to lunch right now and I'll put this up when I get back. And she said, don't let anybody see you looking at it. So I looked at the folder she had opened up, and the letter she had pulled to the top of the stack in there was from a veterinarian out in West Texas. And he had a criteria for the scholarship. One was it had to be for an AB student, and two was it had to be for a student who was married and his wife worked full-time, and three, the student himself had to have a job as well, and number four, they had to have a baby. So I thought, now that's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. But anyway, I turned around. I didn't say anything to Margie. She was gone, and I left. And one thing I did do, though, I looked down at that form, and I saw the guy's name and wrote his phone number down. So I got home, and I thought about that for a few days, and I called the old guy. And he was, like I said, he was out in West Texas, and I called him, and we'll call him Dr. Smith. And I said, Dr. Smith, my name's Lee Carriker, and I just wanted to thank you so much for the scholarship that you sent for me. And I said, you just don't understand. I said, we were struggling, and I was going and telling him about all my hard times. And he just said, stop, son, stop. And I said, what? And he goes, the situation you're in is the same situation I was in 1954. He said, spend that money wisely, keep your head down, and make a good veterinarian out of yourself. So anyway, I almost started crying just then telling that story. I'm getting so old and soft-hearted, it's pathetic. But nevertheless, the old man really took care of me, and I was forever indebted with him. But through all my years in practice, every now and then I would see someone who knew Dr. Smith, who was from the same town or whatever, and it invariably they would say things like, yeah, he's a good vet, but man, he's a crotchety old guy. Or, yeah, that's the grumpiest old SOB I've ever known. And I never met hardly anybody that did not judge him incorrectly. He was one of those guys that had a big heart, that always, more than likely, always did the right thing, but he did not brag about it. He would do good things for people, and he did not want any recognition whatsoever. A man to be admired. Okay, story number 2. All right, here comes your second present. Well, we're going to have wrapping paper and bows all over this truck before you know it. Story number 2. Somehow I miraculously made it out of vet school, and I packed up my little family. Matt was probably about 1.5 years old at this time, and Pat said goodbye to all her friends at her job that she dearly loved, and we loaded up and we went to our new home, and we found a place to rent that we really, really liked. The job I got was really a good job, I thought. It was one of the highest paying jobs in my class. Pat found a wonderful job working for a dentist there in our new town, and Matt just loved his daycare, and all the ladies and the other kids at the daycare loved Matt. So life was going good. It was just perfect. We were happy as we could be. It was Ozzie and Harriet, or for younger people, it was Ozzie and Sharon. Anyway, life was good, and we were doing great until that Friday. I went to work that Friday morning. Fridays were my boss's day off. I knew it was going to be a busy day because it was me by myself. My boss had 3 technicians and I only had 1, but nevertheless I knew I was going to be a busy guy even with the help of his 3 techs. So got in there on that Friday morning, and I went out to the horse barn, and I was working some horses out there, and my technician came up to me and she said, I need to tell you something. And I said, what's that? And she said, there's going to be some big changes here. She said the other 3 technicians, they turned our boss, the other veterinarian, the owner of the vet practice, they turned him in to the Department of Public Safety. They turned him into the state board, and they turned him into the DEA. And I looked at her and I said, Susie, what in the heck? And she said, he's been doing a bunch of illegal stuff. And she said, and they don't like him anyway. And I go, oh my gosh. And I said, what does that mean to me? And she said, I don't know, but you're not going to enjoy your third client this morning. So anyway, third client of the day. I said, this is it. She goes, yeah. So I opened the door. I went in the exam room. There was a man with a suit and tie, and there was a man with a uniform and a gun on his hip. And I went in there, and the guy told me, he said, he told me what had happened, and that my boss was doing a bunch of illegal stuff, and had I seen anything he had done that was illegal. And I said, absolutely not. And the guy started going through this laundry list of all the laws my boss was breaking, and he looked at me and he goes, you haven't seen any of this? You don't know anything about this? And I said, no, sir. And I remember what I remember what I told him to this day. I looked at him and I said, mister, I'm just trying to figure out what makes cats cough. And I said, seriously, I said, I'm really struggling with vet medicine. I said, it's a lot. I said, this is a lot different than school. And I said, I'm just devoting all my time and my energy on working on these animals and trying to get it right, and keeping up with the clients and all. And I said, the last thing I'd want to do is get out and start breaking the law. And he looked at the guy in the suit looked at the cop, and he goes, man, I just really hate to revoke a license that's only 6 months old and the ink's not even dry on it yet. And I thought, oh crap. And this guy said, you could very likely lose your license right now. And he said, you've seen a bunch of stuff. He said, did you see this? Did you see that? I go, yeah, I did, but I didn't realize it was illegal. And the guy goes, he just shook his head, and he said, you could very easily lose your license over this. And I just thought, oh my gosh. And I sat there and I said, well, what do I need to do? And he said, well, if you stay here, you're definitely going to be guilty by association, because now you know. And I said, so I have to quit my job? And he goes, yep. He said, if you want to keep your license, you do. He said, if you want to keep your license, you better. And I said, there's no open jobs in the state. I said, the vet school just released 128 new veterinarians. They're all taken. And he looked at me, he says, not my problem. And I said, all right, well, what else? He said, there's 3 things. You need to quit your job. And he said, number 2, he said, if you tell your boss why you're quitting, he said, a judge is not going to like hearing that. And he said, the 3rd thing, he said, you need to leave town. And man, I mean, he just pulled the rug out from under me with all that. So I went home. I picked up Matt at the daycare, and I took him home. I was this close from just crying. And Pat came home from work, and she was pregnant, with Mark. And I told her what was all going on. And it was a really, really dark time. And I started getting on the phone and calling around to all my classmates, asking them where they were working, if they needed another veterinarian, and or if they knew of any jobs. And nobody knew of anything. And so it was a dark, dark time. And I just started thinking, I thought, here we are in the middle of nowhere, hundreds of miles from either of our homes. I've lost my job. My wife's pregnant. We got a new baby coming. I've got a 2-year-old on the ground. And I could be losing my livelihood. So it was tough. It was really tough. It was a really, really sad time. And so that was on a Friday, and man, it was rough. And on Monday morning, I went in and I told my boss I was quitting, and I made up a bunch of lies and told him that, because I could not tell him the truth without fear of losing my license. And he got so mad at me, and he said, just get out. And I was trying to figure out a way. I knew it was customary to give them 30 days notice, and I knew I couldn't do that without the guy from the state getting mad at me and a judge looking bad in front of a judge. So I didn't have to worry about that, because he got really angry at me, and he told me I was the worst veterinarian he'd ever known, and that I'd never make a living for myself because I was such a bad veterinarian. And he told me to get out, and he didn't ever want to see me again. So I went home like I couldn't get any lower, and I wanted to stop and say, hey, look at you. You're breaking the law. You're the worst veterinarian I know, and all of the girls in this practice hate you. But I didn't. I just bit my tongue and I walked out. So, like I said, it was pretty sad around my house. So anyway, my wife went in and she quit her job, and we were getting ready to move, probably 7 or 8 o'clock one night. I got a phone call, and it was from a veterinarian nearby where we live right now. And he told me the young veterinarian he had just hired had failed his boards and was going to have to go back to LSU and keep studying so he could retake his boards again. And he said, I need a veterinarian really badly. So I said, I will be in your office tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. So I drove halfway across the state. I met this guy, and I explained to him what had happened. And I said, to be honest with you, I carry a lot of baggage with me. It's not over yet. I said, there will be guys from the DEA and guys from the state coming in here into your practice wanting to talk to me. And he looked at me, and he put his hand out to shake my hand, and he said, I'll take the risk. And he wound up being one of my best friends, and still is one of my best friends forever. And looking back on my first story where everyone was judging the old veterinarian, thinking he was an old crotchety guy, those guys from the state, those policemen, everybody, they misjudged me and almost cost me my license. And to be honest with you, I judge my boss too. Whether I judged him correctly or incorrectly, I don't know, but it's not mine to judge. I shouldn't have done that. Anyway, story number 2, where I almost got destroyed. Gift number 3, story number 3, is one where I almost destroyed someone else. All right, friends, gift number 3. And my goodness, there's paper and bows everywhere in this truck right now. Merry Christmas. Story number 3 happened early in my practice, and evidently my first boss was not correct. I did make a pretty good veterinarian, I think. At least a whole lot better than he predicted. But anyway, it happened in my first few years of practice. It also happened on Friday, and it also happened a couple of weeks before Christmas. And we were really getting busy. The clinic was booming, and I was needing help really badly. And I told my head technician, I said, if anybody comes in here and they are a warm body that can pick up diarrhea and clean up vomit and carry out the trash and mop the floors, hire them on the spot. I don't care what they asked for a salary. And she said, okay, I will. And interestingly enough, that same day she came back in and she said, I just hired a girl. And I said, good, put her to work. Well, this girl came in the next day and started, and I didn't pay that much attention to her because I was so busy just trying to keep the clinic going, doing all the surgeries and doing all the medicine cases and all. I was in vet practice by myself. I had some really good technicians, and I knew I could depend on them, so I didn't worry about the new employees at all. I knew my staff would take care of them. But like I said, I hired her a couple of weeks before Christmas, and then getting close to Christmas, one Thursday, right before Christmas, I made a comment. I said, well, what do you girls want for Christmas? And they said, we want you to fire that girl you just hired. And I said, what? And they go, she's terrible. They said, she gets here in the morning, her boyfriend or husband or whatever drops her off in a car, and she comes in the lobby, and while there's people in there and they need their dogs carried to the back, she doesn't even carry them to the back. She sits there and looks out the window until her husband or her boyfriend is driven away, and they said she looks like she lost her best friend when he leaves, and then she's just preoccupied all the time. And I knew she was kind of quiet and a little bit distant, but I didn't realize all of this stuff. And they said, we have to tell her everything to do. We have to tell her twice. It's like she's preoccupied and she's just extremely anxious about something. And they said, she doesn't fit in, and we can't, we spend more time trying to get her to work than we do doing our own work. And I thought, well, crap. And they just said, they made some comments that made me think, that they thought that she was a little bit, for lack of a better word, just saying she was not in a class level that was expected by our clientele. And I'm saying that very kindly. But so anyway, I said, well, all right. I said, well, I'd just been to a veterinary management meeting, a practice management meeting, and they were talking about firing that ball and chain employee that you had. And, if you have somebody that's dragging everyone else down, fire them, get them out of the way, and then your practice can recover and everyone will be happy and come to work with a smile on their face. So I told the girls, I said, well, all right. I said, well, like I said, this was a Thursday. When they told me that, I said, I'll fire her tomorrow. I said, well, come in, we'll get everything done by lunchtime, and then I'll call the girl in my office and I'll fire her at lunch, and then we'll be done with her. I'll let her go at that time. So they said, all right. So I finished out that day, and when I got in my car and I started driving home, I started for some strange reason, something popped into my head, and it was this little prayer that I used to say when I was going to school at A&M, the 8 years I was there going to college, and it was, I can almost recite it perfectly, but I was just asking God to help me do my best and then some, so that I could become a veterinarian, so that I would be put in a position where I would see a lot of people and I would be able to do his work for him. I'd be able to spread love. I'd be able to spread kindness. I would be able to tell them about Jesus. That was my prayer. I asked him if he would help me get through and become a veterinarian, then I would do my best for him too. And I know you're not supposed to make deals with God, but that was my prayer. Nevertheless, whether you're supposed to or not, that was my prayer. And that popped into my head when I was leaving work and driving home that day, and it just went over and over and over in my head. And the next day when I got up, I was going to drive to work, and I was thinking about, when you have to fire somebody, it's never a fun thing. And I thought, oh, I'm going to have to fire this girl today. And I just kept, and I thought, but it's justified. She's not carrying her load. And the other girls are having to suffer for it. So I thought that, and I thought, man, and then that prayer kept coming back to me as I drove to work, and I thought, what's going on here? And then, I got to work, and we got our morning done, and the girl said, are you going to call her in at lunch? And I go, yeah. So I called her in at lunch, and I said, I just asked her, I said, are you happy here? And she said, yeah. And I said, she said, are you going to fire me? And I said, well, I need to ask you some questions. I said, you're making it kind of hard for everyone to be your friend. I said, you don't talk with anybody. You stay to yourself. I said, they have to tell you to do your stuff twice to get you to do anything. And I said, it's really, you're being hard to work with. You're not helping out this business much. And she just started crying, and she said, my life is a wreck. She said, I'm just a mess. And I told her the part about, and I'm gonna have to roll up the window, our cold front is hitting right now. And I told this girl, I said, the girls told me that when you come in the morning, you watch the car that brought you drive down the street when there's ladies with their dogs in their hands in there that you need to be taken care of. And she said, yeah, like I said, my life's a mess. And I said, well, tell me what's going on in your life. And she said, my life is just a wreck. She said, I got pregnant in high school and my parents kicked me out of the house. She said, my friends told me this was a good little town to come to find work. And she said, and I'm here. She said, I have no money. And she said, and I've got a little daughter. And she said, and I said, well, what about the guy that drops you off here? I said, is that your husband? And she goes, no. And I said, is that your boyfriend? And she said, no. She said, it's just a guy that I fell in with. And she said, and he's not a good person. He can't hold a job. And she said, he doesn't want to go look for a job because he's got warrants out for his arrest. She said, he's got a substance abuse problem. And she said, I have to leave my baby in that car with him every morning when he drops me off. She said, I don't know what to do. I'm completely lost in life, and I'm worried to death each day when he drops me off that I'll never see my baby again. And And that little prayer popped back into my head, and I thought, God's done everything I asked him to do. He's done his part, and I told him that I wanted to be a veterinarian so I could get out and help mankind. And here I am, kicking this one little girl to the curb. And, I thought for a minute, I thought, we may be the last bit of hope this girl has at having a decent life. And here we are throwing her to the wolves. So I told the little girl right then, I said, well, let me tell you something. I said, I'm going to help you out. I said, number one, you need to get rid of the guy. I said, whatever you do, you need to get rid of him. And she said, I don't know how. And I said, start working on it. I said, I'll help you. And I said, I'll help you financially too. And I said, I know you're pretty upset. And she told me a lot of stuff, a lot more than what I just told you. She told me a lot of stuff. And I said, well, look, I know you're upset. I know I've upset you, and I apologize for that. And I said, I'm not going to fire you. I said, we will take care of you. I said, I want you going home, and you start right now on putting your life back together in a different way. I said, start with getting rid of that guy. So anyway, she left. She was in tears, and the girls all saw her leaving in tears, and they thought I fired her. And they'd walk by me, and they'd bump me on the shoulder thing, and or give me a thumbs up and kind of laugh a little bit. And I just thought, I'm going to have to wait. And they asked me, did you fire? And I said, we need to have a staff meeting this afternoon when we get all the clients out of here. So 5 o'clock rolled around. We got everybody out of there, and I called them in. And I said, okay, here's the deal. And I explained that poor little girl's situation to them. I said, we have judged her, and we have judged her so wrongly. And I said, you put yourself in her shoes. I said, we got to help her. I said, God put us here to take care of each other, and that's what we're going to do. And I instantly had about 6 crying women in my office, and it was pretty ugly. And they all felt like I did after the fact. They all felt terrible. They were ashamed of themselves, just like I was ashamed of myself. I just couldn't believe we'd treated that poor little girl that way. We didn't even ask her. We did not even take the time to lower ourselves to ask her what was going on in her life. We just judged her, and we were ready to kick her out because she didn't meet our standards. So anyway, the way this thing played out, at that time we took care of all the police dogs, for the drug dogs for the county and for the sheriff's office and for the local police department. So there were always cops in the front foyer 2 or 3 times a week. They'd come up there, and they'd be up there flirting with the girls, and they were all handsome young policemen, and the girls would be flirting back with them. So we were on real good terms with the policemen. And I told the girls, I said during that meeting, I said, she's living with the guy that has substance abuse problems, who is alone with her daughter, and who has warrants out for his arrest. And I said, I'm just going to leave that right there. And so I knew that they would tell those cops immediately, and they did. And so the guy disappeared. We never saw him again. And I was unable to give her a job for her abilities where she could make enough money to take care of rent, car payments, and a baby and all that stuff. But I helped her along until one of my friends could find her a job, and he got her a job working for a business that had all kinds of benefits, paid well, and took care of her. So that, my friends, is a case where we totally misjudged somebody and could have very likely killed them. And I never forgot that. The last time I saw this girl, she stopped by the clinic a few years later, and she had 2 little babies and a nice husband, and life was good. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed those 3 gifts right there. Those are all from pretty dark times in my life. By some miracle, I didn't hurt anybody, and nobody really hurt me either, and all of the situations turned out better than they started. I've used those stories through my life to help people who come into the clinics and they're really, really having some struggles. And I use those so that I can get myself down on the level they're at that point in time and say, I've been there too, and I survived. God put us here to take care of one another. He put us here to love one another, and He put us here to believe in Him. And that's all we have to do. And it's amazing if you do that, how much easier life is. Jesus' birthday's in a couple of days. What a good time of year just to celebrate that, to think about life, to try to be a better person, to try to be less judgmental, to try to love one another, and try to be kind as much as we can. It will indeed give you a much happier life. My dear friends, Merry Christmas to you all. God bless you all. And I want you to always remember I love you. Bye-bye now. So what you doing there, Al?
Neutering a dog, Dad.
All right. Who's going to learn you?
That's a mistake.
Hand me that bottle of water. I should have drank water before leaving the house. Whoa, damn it! Oh. All for a pig skull. I said that thing too much water.